Welcome to the Florida Gardener Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer, and today we are going to discuss how to transform your bland yard into the magical garden of your dreams. Imagine entering a garden that revitalizes all 5 of your senses. Sensory gardens are inviting and encourage us to be more engaged with the plants and features within. No matter what type of garden you're trying to create, if you want it to be more than just a bland yard with some grass, these tips will certainly help. If you've ever been to a really nice garden, whether private or public, like a botanical garden, and you just left thinking like, wow, this is really nice. It's one of those sneaky little things where you may not realize why you're enjoying the garden so much, but it's because the designer has done a great job of incorporating all of these senses. Before we begin, I want to thank Carmen for the Apple review. Carmen writes, one of the few podcasts that focuses on Florida gardening. Keep the episodes coming. Thanks, Carmen. I really appreciate you taking the time to rate the podcast and leave the kind review. I also wanted to tell you guys that I'm all ears if you have any requests for future episodes. Reach out via my website or social and let me know what you want discussed next. Okay, let's get on with it. Number 1, you need to be able to see past color. I want flowers, I want color. I hear that a lot, and trust me, I am all about it. To live in a world without flowers would be one of the saddest things. They just mean so much to me. But what I have also learned is if you only think about color, you end up creating a shallow, one-dimensional landscape. It lacks depth. Give it a couple months and you'll lose interest. The yard will become a screensaver. Imagine if you had a yard full of purple asters. The entire yard is a sea of gorgeous purple flowers. Sounds darling, and it is. But after a while, you will become accustomed to them. And just like if it were grass or anything else, it'll fade into the background and you'll lose interest. We have 5 senses, and when it comes to vision, we perceive a lot through our eyes, not just color. We also see shape, texture, and movement. Shape, is that topiary round or boxy? And digging deeper, is the plant trained as a topiary, a boxwood with small oval leaves, or is it a podocarpus with slender needle-like foliage? Texture, is the tree bark rough with ridges and furrows that intersect, or is it smooth and unbroken by ridges? Movement, graceful and fluid ornamental grasses are a great way to bring movement to a garden. White fountain grass gently sways in the wind. Now compare that to something more rigid, like an agave or a snake plant. All of these elements add visual interest to a garden, especially when a balance is achieved. Another way I like to add visual interest is by incorporating pollinator plants. There is nothing better than watching a butterfly fluttering through the garden or a bee busy at work pollinating. And don't forget about the host plants for the caterpillars. Monarchs love milkweed, but there are tons of other Florida butterflies you can bring in. The Gulf fritillary butterfly is a common Florida butterfly, and they lay their eggs on the passion flower vine, which has a gorgeous purple flower. Just imagine, you can enjoy the entire life cycle of many Florida butterflies in your very own backyard. Check out episode 11 to learn all about pollinator gardens. Okay, moving on to our second sense, which is touch. Does it feel bumpy, soft, sharp, fuzzy? Texture falls into this group as well. While texture is visual, it's also tactile. When it comes to touch, one of my favorite group of plants to play around with is ferns. There are so many, and for the most part, they all play well together, mixed to your heart's delight. Foxtail fern has fluffy stems of pine needle-like leaves, giving it a plush appearance. Macho ferns are a handsome large fern with glossy, leathery leaves. Rabbit's foot fern has furry, trailing rhizomes, and this is how the fern got its name. Up close, the fuzzy rhizomes look like rabbit's feet. The sword fern has upright, straight fronds that are more rigid. This firmness lends the leaves a more defined, somewhat sharper look. I also love mixing spiky plants with plants that feel soft or have a soft appearance. So for example, if you had like a large pot, I specifically envision an urn style planter. And in the center of the pot, you plant cordyline red star with its arching sword-like dark burgundy leaves. And then around the base of the pot, surrounding the cordyline red star, you plant low-growing Angelina sedum, which is a trailing succulent with soft, spongy chartreuse foliage. That can be really nice, and the sedum is just so fun to play around with. I can't help but touch it. Not to mention the color contrast of the burgundy leaves and the lime green sedum. It's so pretty. When it comes to smell, I encourage you to skip the roses and the gardenias. Here in Florida, they both are bound to give you problems. Instead, incorporate plants like sweet almond or orange jasmine. Yes, both of these smell just as lovely as they sound. I love incorporating rosemary as an ornamental plant too. Yep, rosemary isn't limited to the culinary garden. They smell lovely and they hold up well in the landscape for years. Moving right along to the next sense, which is taste. What if you could incorporate some edible flowers? Hibiscus flower can be eaten straight off the plant or dry them out and make a tea. Throwing a dinner party, pansies and violets are classic plate garnishes. They make for a neat presentation that is sure to impress. P.S. Florida has its own native violet, so be sure to check it out. And of course, we have herbs. Chocolate mint is a fun, unique one to incorporate. This one does double duty because not only does chocolate mint taste lovely, but it also has a delightful, minty, chocolatey fragrance. And what about berries? Pick a few beauty berries or mulberries off the bush as you're strolling through your garden. Yes, both of these berry bushes do well here. The American beautyberry is a Florida native, and when it comes to mulberries, there are tons of varieties that thrive in Florida. I've heard you can even ferment mulberries and make wine. Disclaimer, do your research before eating anything from the landscape. I am not an expert in the wild world of edibles. So now I want us to break the silence. That's right, our next sense is hearing. So look, I'm a woodland gal at heart. To me, there is nothing better than the sound of a babbling brook or a gentle forest stream. But we don't live in North Georgia. Unfortunately, here in Florida, freshwater attracts a bunch of the stuff we don't want. Rats, bufo toads, those are the ones that are poisonous if dogs lick them. And if you're talking large bodies of water, ponds, lakes, water moccasins, and gators are right at home. And sure, you could do a fountain or even a bird bath, but standing in warm water easily becomes a breeding ground for algae and mosquitoes. Luckily, there are many plants that are excellent for soundscaping. Have you ever heard the surreal sound of bamboo whistling in the wind? It can create the most haunting harmonics in the yard. Don't have the space for bamboo, but love the Asian aesthetic? Meet tiger grass, what I like to refer to as bamboo's smaller, more manageable cousin. Many seed pods are percussive as they dry. Any in which the seeds are loose when the pod splits or develops openings that shake the seed in all directions to achieve distribution make sound. One of my absolute favorite plants for soundscaping is any type of tall ornamental grass, especially white fountain grass and purple fountain grass. They make gentle swishing sounds as the wind passes through their foliage. Now, plants are not the only way to add gentle sound to the garden. Wind chimes are another favorite. I like the wooden and bamboo wind chimes. They create a soft, soothing sound. Unlike metal wind chimes, wood is not tuned to a particular note or pitch, which is great for those who prefer a more natural, lower-pitched sound. And bamboo is slightly quieter, which makes this a great option if you don't want to disturb close-by neighbors. Now, if you have the space, consider adding a gravel path in your backyard. Lining a path with gravel and stones will make every footstep a pleasure and send a lovely sound throughout your space. My absolute favorite way to incorporate an audible element into the garden is with birds. A garden isn't complete without a few jays and cardinals, but in order to keep rats and other fun Florida critters away, I do not use birdseed. I like to bring them in naturally. I find it to be more rewarding. You really gotta crack the code. It's sort of like starting a sunflower from seed versus buying it potted at the store. It helps you to better understand backyard wildlife, not just their food interests, but their overall behavior and patterns. And look, I'm not saying birdseed is cheating. I've used feeders and enjoyed them, but I've learned it's sort of like crack for them, like taking your kid to McDonald's every day. Also, probably most importantly, you should be cleaning the feeder out weekly to prevent disease. I don't know about you guys, but I certainly wasn't doing that. And unfortunately, this can cause birds to pass certain diseases around and get sick, and it's just not a good thing. Anyway, I digress. So what birds can you bring in and how do you attract them? Florida has a ton of birds. Some of the Florida backyard birds that I have noticed include cardinals, blue jays, blackbirds, mourning doves, red-bellied woodpeckers, and mockingbirds. And although technically invasive, English sparrows are quite common. And of course, we have many seasonal birds. The American robin is my favorite winter visitor. Unpopular opinion: the mourning dove is my favorite backyard bird. They are so darling. To many, they just look like a brown pigeon. But when you observe them up close, they are absolutely gorgeous. They aren't just brown birds. They have this gorgeous iridescent pink and blue flash on their neck. And then there's this ring of vivid baby blue that encircles its eye. It almost looks like it's painted on. And they have the sweetest temperaments. They are so docile. Compare that to the blue jay, who's just always trying to start drama. Not gonna lie, that's kind of cute too. And the mourning dove coos are just oh so lovely. If you've heard some of the other birds, the jays, crows, some of the other blackbirds, it can get a little annoying. But the mourning dove coo is just oh so lovely. Oh my goodness. Talk about soundscaping. Their coo is so soothing and relaxing. When it comes to food, birds love fruit and seeds. Plant a couple of those beautyberry bushes or mulberry bushes that I mentioned earlier, and some flowers such as black-eyed Susan, sunflowers, tick seed, Mexican sunflower, zinnias, blanket flower, Joe pie weed, coneflower, goldenrod, and even ornamental grasses. The more variety you have, the better for these guys. And fun fact, some birds prefer to eat the seeds while they are still intact to the flower, while others, such as mourning doves, prefer to wait for them to fall off the flower head and peck them from the ground. Either way, be sure not to prune spent flowers. You want these seeds to be able to dry so that the birds can eat them. Birds also need a place to roost. So if possible, plant some trees or large shrubs. And if you already have some mature plants, be mindful of pruning. Not to say that you can't prune. I'm not saying that. My neighbor had a mockingbird nest in their firebush. They gave their firebush a hard prune, which ended up exposing the nest. Next thing you know, a crow swooped in and took the eggs. I'm not making this up. I saw it all happen. Gotta love nature. Okay, so I went on a few tangents, but hopefully you learned a thing or two. Incorporating all of these different senses into your garden is how you transform a one-dimensional yard into a multi-sensory garden that encourages visitors not only to observe, but to engage and interact. You become part of the experience. It's not just, oh, those are pretty purple flowers. You see the difference? It's the layers. The purple flowers might be one aspect of the design, and maybe that's what initially draws you in. And it's not to say they're not gorgeous, but you don't stay and continue to revisit just for the purple flowers. It's bigger than that. You see, it's not just about us. It's about creating a yard full of life in every sense of the meaning. That's when an internal spark is lit and you feel a true connection to nature. All right, that wraps up episode 17 of The Florida Gardener. We will see you soon for episode 18. And in the meantime, if you'd like to download one of my Etsy garden templates or check out my social, you can access everything through my website, rootsredefined.com. That's roots, R-O-O-T-S, redefined, R-E-D-E-F-I-N-E-D.com. All right, thanks guys. We'll see you again soon.